Alright. Hello everyone. Sorry that it's been a little bit since we've made some content. I've been having some issues with my job lately, and it's been hard for me to come back to play Dead by Daylight. Hence the reason why it's taken me so long to come back to making a video for this channel, so I do apologize for the brief little break. But now that I've come back to Dead by Daylight, apparently the game is incredibly broken right now with a ton of bugs across the board for a multitude of killers, and if I'm playing killer side, that means that my options are severely restricted. Deathslinger also apparently is really a bug this patch, and on the survivor side, I don't want to be running into people who are playing bugs killers or abusing bugs on killers. So either way, I not really feeling making Dead by Daylight content right now, so I'm doing something that I can do in between in interim, which is to make my own subjective tier list on how much I enjoy playing every killer in Dead by Daylight. And we're just going to go through them in release order, or in order as you see them here. I'll explain my thoughts on them, might say some builds that I enjoy playing with them in case you want to try those out too, but for the most part this is going to be a very subjective video, one that's going to be a bit more laid back, something you can put in the background to listen to while you do whatever activity you want to in the back. So that's just what I'm here for, and I'd like to also have this as a way to, I know I'm rambling a lot, so I'm sorry, but I want to have this up here as a way to explain my thoughts on every killer, so that when someone comes into my chat in Twitch streams or in my comments and they ask me, hey Kai, what do you think about this killer? What do you think about this killer? I'll have this video, I'll have timestamps down below so that you can hear my full thoughts as they are accurate to today. Now, of course, it'll change over time, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the Trapper. Now, the Trapper I'm going to stick in the dislike tier, and that's because, and this is going to be a common thread that you'll see a lot, but that's because I do find the M1 killer brand to be generally pretty boring. But not only is the Trapper an M1 killer, but he's also an M1 killer with a power that is actively detrimental, and he has an incredibly boring play style that makes it so that it's not all that great to play him. A lot of the times, you can get stunned by your own traps. Survivors can hold your traps open so that people can go through them. If you get stunned by somebody jumping off your shoulder or stunning you with a pallet save or whatever, the survivor that gets off your shoulder has immunity to traps. And there's a lot of frustrations in his kind of base kit overall that makes him feel really sluggish and kind of detrimented for using his power, because every time he uses his power he loses time on the map and he has to go to a location to set up a trap. And the strongest way to play this guy is by camping out one specific room or a basement, and that also isn't all that fun to play. That being said, he's not in the hate tier specifically because there is some satisfaction of being like, oh, I put up that trap and someone jumped through the window and I preemptively prepared that location for them to go to get trapped, and getting rewarded for having your action, or for having the premonition to place traps in specific locations is incredible. It's such a great feeling, and the snowball that you can get with this killer is also really funny. I've actually had a lot of people disconnect against this killer because I think they're like, oh, I can't believe I'm losing to a Trapper right now. Starstruck and Agitation is probably my favorite combo of perks on him, because you pick somebody off of a trap and then suddenly everybody's exposed, and so it forces them to panic, and then they might likely run into traps that you've already set. I usually run Iridescent Stone with the, it could be like double Iridescent, sometimes Honing Stone, sometimes with the green coil that makes it take survivors 50% longer to open the traps as well. You can do like a Hex Defender build with them, and I try to throw Corrupt Intervention into his build every time because he needs that extra time to actually play properly. Next up we have Wraith. Wraith I'm going to put also in dislike and slightly above Trapper. Now, the movement speed feels pretty good. Being able to sneak up on survivors is a pretty decent time overall, but I do find Wraith's playstyle ultimately a little bit too basic, a little bit too boring, where it's just, I'm going to go stealth, I body block, I get an M1, and then I go stealth, and then I body block, and then I M1, and then I stealth, and that really doesn't change a whole lot. The main difference is understanding how the map unfolds around this character, but in terms of the actual execution of his power, there isn't a whole lot of variety to it. The reason why I put him slightly above Trapper is because his being able to be rewarded for having good macro knowledge feels really satisfying, and I like that better than getting a random chance that a trap might actually snap somebody's ankles. That being said, though, Wraith is probably one of my less favorite killers to play. He's not unbearable, I just find him really boring, and out of all of the M1 killers, he is the most boring of the entire cast, in my opinion, and I'm going to be sticking to that opinion. No builds for Wraith, aside from like maybe hit and run, like Bamboozle, Sloppy Butcher, Rapid Brutality, and like Brutal Strength or something, or Surge, you know, some kind of M1 chase-based build, but I really don't have a whole lot for this killer. Hillbilly. Hillbilly I'm kind of neutral on, actually. Hillbilly, in a similar way to Wraith, I do find pretty boring, because Wraith, while his gameplay mechanics don't really change all that much, Hillbilly is kind of similar in my mind. Now, I know that's a controversial take, where people will be like, oh, but you can do all these, like, cool attacks with low pro chains, and the speed that you get with which to move across the map is really cool. But I do find that visually, and also from my overall experience, that a lot of Hillbilly's gameplay remains the same. It changes slightly depending on how survivors play around specific obstacles, but when the gameplay is just, oh, I might want to feather my chainsaw here, or I might want to use it to break this pallet here and pressure the survivor or back rev, there are like little bits that make a lot of difference, but I find that watching and playing Hillbilly tends to be pretty similar across the board. Now, it is very satisfying to be able to sprint across the map and get a cross-map snipe and always know that you have that constant pressure on you, but you're not able to, you know, looking ahead to Nurse, of course, you're not able to phase through walls, so you do obviously have to plan ahead. There is a reward for actually being able to think ahead as to where you're going, and that increased movement speed and that kind of guarantee of pressure, while being linear and easy to pick up, is why he's in neutral and above the M1 killers, because he's at least a little satisfying in some ways. The Nurse, I think I'm also going to put her in neutral. I know that we've been sticking around the bottom of this tier here, but the problem that I have with Nurse, and the reason why she's not higher, is that yes, blinking and getting those blinks perfect and outsmarting survivors through obstacles is really fun. The problem that I have with Nurse, and why I don't like or love playing her, is because she's been out in the game for so long, and survivors tend to instantly give up when they hear her, or you get a group of survivors that hear the Nurse and they immediately turn on maximum efficiency mode, right? Like they know the perfect plays, and for myself, I haven't played a whole lot of Nurse, it's really hard to try and learn this killer at a base level, because you'll run into survivors that are absolutely cracked, or if they're not cracked, they're doing something unpredictable, and it's hard to learn this killer in a way. I'm sure that if I learn her over time, it'll get more satisfying to be able to land those hits through walls and be able to get the right predictions and everything. But as it stands right now, Nurse just doesn't play by the same kind of rules, doesn't have a lot of those pitfalls outside of individual skill, and so I don't find her particularly interesting because she's so strong, which is kind of a weird oxymoron thing to go in here, but at least she is a little bit stronger than some of the M1 killers. Well, I mean, a lot stronger than the M1 killers, and she does have a pretty unique power, which is cool, that is satisfying to use. Myers I'm going to put lower on the neutral side. Now, Myers is interesting because even though he is a very, very basic M1 killer, probably even more basic than Wraith, I find Myers' ability to change his threat level throughout the game to be kind of fun. You know, people are like, oh, okay, oh, there's Myers, he's stalking us, oh, we got to get moving, I guess, here. To, oh no, he's in tier 3, this is immediate death. The ability to ramp up and become a threat more immediately makes Myers feel satisfying. The increased vault speed on tier 3 as well is kind of fun. You can throw that in with Superior Anatomy and Bamboozle and get those super vaults. You can do the super lunge with the likes of All Shaking Thunder and Coup de Grace in tier 3. And those are really, really fun combos. Something that I really like doing as well is Monitor and Abuse and Dead Rabbit, where Dead Rabbit reduces your terror radius in tier 2 by 25%, and the Monitor Abuse reduces your terror radius by 8 meters. And so I think you effectively have an 8 meter terror radius, 10 meter terror radius when you're in, I can't remember the math exactly, but you have a very small terror radius when you're in tier 2 with Myers, and that allows you to sneak up on people a lot more readily and actually prepare yourself for tier 3 plays. Now, the downside of Dead Rabbit is that when you're in tier 3, you do have an increase of your terror radius by 25%, but you combine that with, was it like the Tuft of Hair, the purple add-on that makes it so that you hold on to tier 3 for longer, and that's a pretty fun combo. I've also done one build that's like super obsession charging, where it's Nemesis with Enduring, Spirit Fury, that classic combo, and Friends Till the End, so the obsession jumps around all the time. They become oblivious, and then you run the J. Myers Memorial and the other green add-on that increases your stalking rate, so that you're just constantly putting people in oblivious. They stun you, they can't stop you with pallets, and then you get tier 3 extremely quickly against people who try to stun you, and you just kind of snowball out from there. And I find that kind of variance fun for that killer. The Hag. The Hag I'm going to put into dislike above Wraith and Trapper, and it's because Hag does have some fun builds. I mean, Chase Hag is really funny when you do Waterlog Shoe and stack all of the haste effects together, but Hag's base mechanics, Hag's base gameplay of I'm going to knock down a survivor and hook them and then camp out this area with a bunch of traps. It's not, I don't like having to proxy camp, and I don't like that for Trapper either. Camping basement's a boring playstyle for me for Trapper, and in a similar way, proxy camping an area by setting up spiderweb with Hag is a little bit boring, because it just feels like I'm not taking the action of the match into my own hands. I'm hoping that the survivors come to me. They come to the zone that I have controlled. And while that can be kind of satisfying in getting the payoff for actually having survivors walk into your spiderweb, the lack of agency in the sense that, oh, a survivor can just crouch over that and sneak through, or they can just completely ignore my part of the map, or if I get going too quickly and I haven't had time to set up in the game and I'm perpetually behind, that's where the Hag starts to feel frustrating. On top of the other like thing where, what is it? There's that what would you call it? There's a trick that you can do with Hag's traps where if you run at them while looking behind yourself, so if you see a Hag trap and then you run as if the killer was directly behind you, it sends the Hag's camera the wrong way. So if she teleports to the trap, then she won't be able to hit the survivor that triggered the trap, which is also something that not a lot of people know. But when you do encounter it, it feels really bad to have your power invalidated in such a way. So Hag can be fun, but she can feel very frustrating because of how she's so reliant on being a much more mobile version of Trapper. Doctor. Oh man, we're not really off to any good starts here, are we, for these first 7 killers. Doctor I'm also going to put in dislike below Wraith, in the sense that a lot of his gameplay is pretty similar. You shock survivors so they can't drop pallet or jump window, but if they buffer window or pallet and you are hit with ping, they still get to go through that window and pallet anyway. And so understanding the timing with Doctor is something that I just haven't gotten around to dedicating a whole lot of time to, and he feels very frustrating in the way that his power can be invalidated by something completely out of your control. You have to shock slightly earlier, but then if you shock too early, you won't be able to catch the survivor, and they'll make it to another obstacle anyway. And that feels crummy to play with. that just doesn't feel all that satisfying as a killer. And so being denied because specific mechanics of the game that, again, are out of your control, have rolled in a certain way that they're just not... It feels more frustrating when you're just not able to control how that power works. I guess there is the kind of fun build in those infinite skill checks or those impossible skill check builds, but I feel like it's a bit more gimmicky, and the power itself isn't satisfying enough to me to really want to use it all the time. Speaking of satisfying powers, though, we have Huntress. Huntress, I'm always kind of like in between putting in neutral and like. I might put her at top of neutral overall, which might be surprising because people might think, oh, well, you're a Deathslinger main. Why would you not like the other range killers? And it's because the Huntress, as a range killer, plays so differently from Caleb. Like, Caleb has the ability to shoot through cracks in the in pallets and invalidate entire loops, whereas Huntress is able to catch you immediately at kind of most conventional junctures. You know, she has line of sight of you, you're taking damage, and if the Huntress is thinking slightly ahead of time, then that's, you know, ability to damage. But she can't hit over the same obstacles that Slinger can, and she can't the creativity for Huntress comes in more of her ability to predict long-range shots and orbitals, which is, don't get me wrong, that's super duper satisfying, because being able to instantly get a down across the map and still be able to pressure survivors nearby feels so good. Like, she's a very explosive killer that can change the course of the game in a matter of seconds, and that is really cool. It's really, really fun. And the fact that you can use, like, her power up close as well and not be punished for it and still have 7 shots has a level of satisfaction. The sound of the hatchets hitting a survivor is really satisfying. But without being able to hit through obstacles in the same way that Deathslinger does, and in a similar way to the Huntress, or the Nurse, with how she's been out in the game for goodness knows how long, since the beginning of the game, basically. Well, actually, not basically. She has been out since the beginning of the game. Survivors who have been playing this game for a long time will already know the counter to Huntress, and there's really not a whole lot that you can do against that. If you're not experienced with Huntress, because she takes a little bit of getting used to, then Huntress herself becomes a difficult killer to play, and doesn't feel like she can manipulate the maps in non-conventional ways like Deathslinger can. And so I often think, like, yeah, I'm having a good time playing Huntress, I'm hitting good hatchets, but damn, do I wish I was playing Deathslinger right now. So that's like kind of my general feelings on her. Love playing aura base builds with her, though. Lethal Pursuer, Barbecue and Chili, Darkness Revealed, Zanshin Tactics. Oh, love that build. Love being able to just see people through walls, and, you know, it really helps me with learning survivor movement and all of that, and feels really satisfying because she doesn't really need slowdown to be effective. She just needs to know where you are. Now, Bubba. Oh, I love me some Bubba, actually. I really do like Bubba quite a bit. This character, after his buffs as well, not being able to bump on pallets, feels so much more lethal around short loops. Now, of course, survivors do have a little bit of counterplay in being able to time pallet stuns correctly, and that just feels like that's the survivor knowing how to play against me really well, and just knowing that specific timing, and that's like practiced. But the lethality that this killer offers at close ranges is so immensely satisfying. Being able to get multiple downs with one chainsaw is a release of dopamine that you really don't get with a whole lot of other killers. And in that 1v1 scenario, in tighter loops as well, he just feels so incredibly lethal. He's not in the love category because there are a lot of games that can be frustrating to play with him, and sometimes like weird obstacles and collision hitboxes are extremely awkward for him. Like, for example, on Eyrie of Crows, which I think is a extreme example, but on Eyrie of Crows you have a whole bunch of weird, like, ankle height obstacles. You have all these weird trees and branches that have way larger hitboxes than it seems like they actually should, and so poor guy gets ruined by weird map geometry on occasion, and he can feel frustrating in those specific moments, but still feels really satisfying for me to play overall. New Fredward. New Freddy, I actually, I mean, I could put him, like, above, I'll put him here in neutral, because Freddy, again, is an M1 killer. Has the same issue that Wraith and Doctor have, where your play is, I'm going to M1, and then I'm going to snare, and then I'm going to M1. And occasionally use pallets, but blood pallets are not quite as effective all the time. It's only good for if somebody's trying to camp a specific area and they think that a pallet's there, but if they see that the pallet's not there, then they'll just leave. They'll just take off, and so you'll just continue using the snare 90% for 90% of your games. But the movable snare, putting survivors in the dream world, and being able to teleport across the map and having this constant map pressure with Freddy makes him feel really lethal. It actually makes him feel really fun to play, because survivors are often having to keep you in the back of their mind. Even if he is an M1 killer, his mobility is what makes up for it, and the unique nature of his power still feels like it has a little bit of ramifications. You have to aim the snare. You have to, if you're really lucky, you have to be able to predict when a survivor is going to be playing around specific pallets, and there's some funny things you can do on RPD or the game, you know, these multi-layered rooms that have pallets with the, I think it's like the unicorn block add-on, where you extend the range and you can hit people through floors with pallets. So you have like the landmine build basically with Freddy, which is a lot of fun to play. Oh, I forgot to mention for Bubba, I like doing a stealth build, like Deathbound, Tinkerer, Hex Plaything, and maybe even Retribution, Hex Retribution in there. You know, oh, Unforeseen is the other perk I was thinking of. Anyway, Freddy having that cross-map teleport, having the ability to slow people down with the snares, and the possibility of using blood pallets against survivors does make him feel a lot more unique in a lot of ways. He has a kind of like little microcosm of stuff going for him, and he's a very good chase killer and feels like an inevitability in that sense. So he's satisfying, a little bit boring, because it's like, oh, okay, cool, I played a good game of Freddy. I'm gonna go do something else now. And so rework feels great. Not my favorite character in the game, but definitely not terrible. The pig. Oh, I used to love the pig when I was first starting out with the game, but I'm gonna have to put her down here in the bottom of neutral overall. And the reason why the pig is down here is because she is unfortunately an M1 killer. Now, she has a couple of fun builds that you can run with her, where you run Workshop Grease with Last Will to give you the super dash and make like every pallet invalid, or you have the Amanda's Letter with John's Medical File, where it's just the constant crouch build as well, which is really, really funny for add-ons. And both of those builds are innately very fun to play with, but Pig does suffer from being an M1 killer, being kind of boring to play, in the sense that most other killers that will be able to hit around pallets with the extreme dash that she has are pretty, you know, it's the time that she has to spend trying to get those dashes off just doesn't feel all that great. And a lot of survivors know the counterplay, at least the MMR that I play. They know the counterplay of, if you hear the pig go stealthy and she's trying to hit you with a dash, just leave the loop. It's the same as the Dredge, and because of that, the crouch timer, once you recognize that the survivor's already left the loop, you have to stand back up, and you're already slowed to movement speed, and it kind of spirals out from there in a negative way. So the pig, you can do like the side quest build where you give them tampered timer with what's the other one? Box of Gears, so it makes them take longer to open the jigsaw boxes, and then you run all like scream perks, so that every time that they scream, they reset the progress on their box unlocking and everything, and that's pretty funny. I've gotten like some head pops off of that. It's not going to be a winning strategy. It's okay. It's not always a winning strategy. It's not a winning strategy. Just trying to hope that you can get value out of your perks, especially if it's a larger map. But That build's kind of funny. Again, it's not always a winning one. You'll probably get one head pop at most, but the RNG that this killer also has to face up against feels a little bit bad. Even though the dash attack is fun, it's just not nearly as lethal or consistent as other killers that are above her here. But at least she has a little bit more going for her in the way of a funny build and funny add-ons than how I feel about the other killers below her in this tier list. The Clown. The Clown I'm going to put slightly below Freddy. Clown and Freddy feel very similar to me. Both of them are killers that use their power to negate loops and amplify their ability in chase. There's really not a whole lot of difference in that regard, and Freddy's teleport at least feels like, oh, okay, cool, I have a little bit of pressure and I can play around with that. Clown, on the other hand, is just, I'm going to throw bottle and I M1 you. And the reason I put him up here instead of down here, where it's like I've said that these people have really boring powers or powers that encourage boring playstyles, Clown feels like there's a lot more nuance and a lot more, quite a few more, how would I put it? Well, I mean, nuance, I've already said nuance. I'm trying to say that there's minor details that you can work around with Clown's power, knowing when to throw your red bottles or yellow bottles at your feet for a specific loop, and where to throw your pink bottles so that the survivors can't go around to get your yellow bottles and catch up to them, and you can catch up to them more quickly. Clown feels like he has a lot of little intricacies with his power specifically, that also feels really good in the sense that you can deny windows and pallets and what have you, and feels really good in chase. So I enjoy playing Clown on occasion. He's very much a fallback, just I'm gonna play anti-loop and slow survivors down kind of killer. But very much in the same way with Freddy, I'm just like, alright, I have my one game of Clown, I'm good, and then I move on and I do something else entirely. But yeah, Cloud not bad. I've been running a build that's like save the best for last, rapid brutality, sloppy butcher, and blood favor. So entirely a anti-pallet chase build. I do sloppy butcher, which might not be necessary. I could always swap that out for surge. I could swap that out for Forever Entwined as well, the new pickup perk, which I've been really enjoying from the Ghoul. Initially, I thought Forever Entwined wasn't going to be all that good of a perk, but it feels pretty satisfying to be able to use that to save yourself time on picking up survivors, and Clown is a good proponent of that strategy. Spirit is going to be my first one in the love category. I have nearly 2,000 hours in Rainbow Six Siege, which means that my ears are tuned to listen for teeny tiny differences in sound effects, and for Spirit that is a skill that I'm able to transfer over from that other game that I didn't expect to like at first, but I absolutely love now because of how satisfying it is to land that. Being able to track survivors while in your Spirit Husk is incredible. I love being rewarded for having a skill that is kind of crucial to the game, actually. Sound is such a crucial component of Dead by Daylight overall, and Spirit is a killer that rewards you for understanding what you're listening to. And because she is a killer that rewards you for being able to listen to the rest of the game, having the ability to teleport around pallets or fake people out or catch people out before they even realize that you're on top of them is so immensely satisfying. There's just some level of I need to expand my vocabulary here, but there is a level of satisfaction, of gratification of being able to get a survivor perfectly when you're in phase, and being able to train for that and then play around survivors who know how to play against Spirit and listening for them doubling back and everything. There's so many little so many minutia and mind games that spiral out from what on the surface looks like a very simplistic power that makes Spirit so fun to play. And I love playing Spirit. I don't play her all the time because I usually play Deathslinger, but then whenever I pick up Spirit, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, I love this killer. Why haven't I played this killer more? And so I actually do want to get good at this killer because of how much I enjoy playing her and how much I enjoy learning how to play around with sound and being able to listen to the game itself. The Legion. Oh boy. The poor Legion, I'm going to put in dislike. I'm putting him below Trapper as well, because, well, Trapper, you can get some satisfaction in people running into traps randomly. Legion, on the other hand, is the most satisfying thing about this killer is being able to get a frenzy down. And that's fine, but I find that this killer's power is pretty reductive. It's just, I stab and I run at people, and then I go off and I stab and run at other people. And while you can apply pressure in that way specifically, and it is fun to run fast occasionally, as time goes on, you realize that there's a lot more to Dead by Daylight than stabbing and running fast. I mean, even with Wraith is kind of a similar thing, where you M1 and then you run faster in the location. And Legion does that, but with even less power, because of how you're with even less efficacy, because of how you are not stealthy while using your power. In fact, your tear radius goes up while you're in frenzy, which is kind of crazy to me. I guess it's to give people warning that Legion is on their way, but when you compare them to the powers of other killers that we'll especially get into as we get later into this game, they just feel like a husk. They don't feel all that satisfying to play, because it's just, I don't know, it's kind of boring. There's really not a whole lot to it. The Plague. The Plague I think I like. The Plague is, I know that a lot of people don't like playing as the Plague because the hyper emesis that she brings to the table is pretty off-putting for a lot of people. I know that people are offset by the sounds of vomit and sickness and all sorts of things, but Plague I really like because of her ability to passively apply global pressure, and then having a range power on top of that really threatens survivors at the end of the day. Being able to have that constant pressure, but also on a power that feels like the best range power in the game. I mean, it is the best range power in the game, let's be honest with ourselves, because you can tag multiple survivors in one hit and you have it active for a pretty long length of time. So Plague has the ability to pressure multiple people on the map and also get some passive information whenever they do choose to cleanse. But she still has to be able to get to that location to use her power. She has to respect pallets, and you have to understand how to lead her power, because it's a very slow moving projectile when you do use it. And so because of that, there's a lot of interesting intricacies that are useful for her, but she also simultaneously gets a lot of good information and passive pressure by setting up a center of control, or just being like, I'm going to puke on all the gens, and then I know if you touch a gen, I'm going to be able to go after you. And that feels good. Like, the having intricacies in her power is something that you don't really often see with a lot of killers in Dead by Daylight that have the same level of pressure that she can, and she feels very unique compared to a lot of other ones, and it's one that I always enjoy playing because she is both strong, but also feels like I learn something new every single time I play her. Now, I don't love her because there are people who, again, know how to play really well against her, and some maps feel really bad to play on for her, and because of that, it's not always my top preferred pick, but I don't mind playing Plague whenever I do bring her about, and I think that she's a pretty solid pick overall. I try to go, if I'm ever going for like a gen regression build, I go with like Pop Eruption, you know, some gen kicking stuff. Beyond that, I don't know, there's a lot of builds that this killer can use, because she can down with M1, she can down with power. There's a lot of things that she can do. And I really, that's why I have her up here in comparison to the rest of the roster. Ghostface. Ghostface we're going to put next to Pig. I'm going to put up above. Similar to Myers in the way that you have this ramping pressure that you can create by exposing survivors. I really like jump scaring people as well. I love doing it with just basically any killer. And Ghostface is the king of jump scares in this game. However, he can feel horrendous on massive maps. He can feel terrible on any maps where survivors are communicating well. And he can fall behind pretty quickly because of that. And the power is also not all that diverse, and it has a lot of bugs to it. So there are things to dislike about it. But I love the ability to stealth and also manipulate your visible hitbox by being able to crouch behind things, or crouch and lean out to stalk people so that you're less obvious to people. And I can imagine that anyone who sees the Ghostface leaning and stalking out from behind a wall is like, oh crap, that's a Ghostface that's sitting over there, and they'll get right in. And it's always like fun to know that that I've probably scared at least a few people with this killer, and he has the same kind of, again, the ramping power as Myers does, but with it being a basic M1 power and some stealth, it's not always the most interesting killer to play, but I don't mind playing him all that much. Demogorgon. Demogorgon used to be one of my least favorite killers, is now becoming one of my favorite killers behind Spirit, but man, the map pressure, the ability to zone and take total control over pallets and just constantly have that range available as a killer. I've really come around on playing this killer. I think there are some maps that aren't all that great for Demogorgon, but you can set up so much pressure with Demogorgon by being able to place portals in key locations across the map. You can ignore a lot of pallets. You can threaten people on a lot of pallets with this killer while still feeling like you have constant pressure. That's something that actually, like, again, Deathslinger is my most played killer, so I'm gonna make a couple of comparisons here, but Deathslinger feels like after you break the chain or spear somebody and have to reload, you lose a lot of your pressure. Demogorgon doesn't really lose that pressure, because after the pallet breaks, and especially if you're running Barb's glasses, you can just pick right back up again and you can get into range very quickly. And so having that kind of constant presence in chases, and especially in open areas, feels really good to play, and I'm a very big fan of this killer. I love playing builds that include, well, my favorite build for this killer is Pain Res, Grim Embrace, Agitation, Awakened Awareness. And so with Agitation, Awakened Awareness, I can take people to hooks that I prefer a lot more easily, while also gaining information on people that are nearby. Place a portal, teleport across the map, and then continue applying my presence, as it were, wherever I end up landing myself at. The Demogorgon just feels fun. It's an easy killer to pick up, but one that also has a lot of strength and a lot of weaknesses. And I like things that have weaknesses that actually teach me, okay, this is what you did slightly wrong, but there's still a learning curve that you can work around, and Demogorgon feels like it slots right into that requirement for myself quite well. The Oni. Oh, people are going to hate me for this one, I know that, but I really do not like the Oni. I know that flicking is very satisfying. I know that getting the insta-down in power is satisfying, but I cannot get past the slowed mouse movement speed while in power. And indoor maps feel impossible with this killer. I mean, hell, even an outdoor map. I've gotten Garden of Joy so many times on this killer, and that map is infuriating on Oni. There's those little, like, highway, like, road barricades, and then there's all the bushes and everything for Oni, and if you flick too hard in power, then you end up whiffing and looking like a damn fool. And so Oni ends up feeling a lot more frustrating in execution when I'm trying to use his power, and that is going to come down to practice, and as I get more practice, I'm sure that I'll enjoy Oni more. But as it stands now, my general experience with Oni has been nothing short of a frustrating one, where the power feels like I don't understand the sensitivity, I don't understand how the flicking really works, and when I do end up hitting somebody with the power, it doesn't feel earned. I don't feel like I'm playing him correctly. I feel like it's more that the survivors are messing up against me. Sprinting around the map is pretty fun, and I am gradually getting used to the coasting ability. that he has, which, you know, Billy also has a similar sensitivity thing going on. But where Billy always has the threat, Oni has to build up his threat, and then also has to have the added requirement of needing to flick so hard or not hard enough to actually get any downs in it. Maybe it's fun to snipe people, but I get frustrated every time I play this killer because of how damned frustrating he can be to play. And that's why he's down here at the bottom of dislike. It's not because he's boring like all the other killers that are in this tier, but entirely because he is more frustrating than I would like him to be. We're at the Deathslinger. We already know this guy is going to be at the top of my love tier list. There is so much that I can say about Deathslinger, so many things that I could get into, but I'll try to keep it relatively brief. To give you an idea of how much I can actually talk about Deathslinger, just look at this channel. You can see that a lot of the videos that I've made have been on this killer around his power, and I talk about the limitations and everything, and I don't always play well with him. That's just kind of a given on a killer of his caliber, but man, does he feel satisfying and rhythmic and methodical. The sound design, the chase theme, everything about this killer I have just thoroughly fallen in love with, to the point where I'm actually considering, my hair's like a couple inches above my shoulders right now. It's medium length, and I want to try to put together a costume for Deathslinger for Halloween. Like, that's how much I enjoy this killer. But let's actually talk about his power in game. Deathslinger has a very unique power that can... the word that I've used in my essays that I've written about him, can bend the fabric of space and time in Dead by Daylight. And I really appreciate that Dead by Daylight, in a lot of its senses, have made it so that the hitboxes are things that you can see through, are things that he can shoot through. Not always, like, it's not always the case. Like, obviously some slats in a window is not going to be enough for him to shoot through. And then there are also some locations that look like you should be able to shoot through, but you just can't because of wrong hitboxes. But I don't hold that against Deathslinger, because the rest of the actual use of his power is so damn satisfying for me. I've actually written... I'm writing 3 different essays on Deathslinger, which I'm going to probably be releasing over the next couple of weeks. Well, no, 2 of them I will. One of them I'm holding on for much later. But first one is talking about what is bad about Deathslinger, which I know sounds like a weird way to talk about my love for this character, but there was one that I had that was what makes Deathslinger good, and so I want to talk about like the negative aspects of Deathslinger, like why he can feel relatively weak, and why he can be frustrating to play at times. But he's my highest prestige for a good reason. I'm getting him to Prestige 100 for very good reason, and it's because he is my favorite killer to play. I don't see that changing anytime soon, because no other killer really tickles the brain in the same way that Deathslinger does, and I absolutely love him to bits. It's just, oh, he's so satisfying. I can't get over how much I enjoy playing this character, and I'm very happy to have designated him as my overall main. Next up, we have the likes of Pyramid Head. Pyramid Head, I'm actually going to put down in dislike next to Oni, in the same way that the power can feel very frustrating to use. Now, there was somebody in my Twitch chat recently who was telling me about the window of time that you have to flick with Pyramid Head to adjust your aim if need be, which is when you press M2, but before the sword enters the ground, you have complete control of the direction that you can move your camera. And so that's something that I'm willing to experiment with, but as it stands right now, the camera bug on Pyramid Head in M2 is extremely frustrating. I don't like how the game changes your sensitivity while you're in M2, which maybe it would be a little bit strong if you could perfectly track survivors, but it doesn't feel smooth. It feels rather jittery. And on top of that, this is probably similar to Trapper. Maybe I'll put him above Legion, because at least he's a little bit more fun to play than Legion. And more fun to play than Trapper and Doctor. So we'll put up here, because getting shots through walls is really fun. I do enjoy that, and running like full aura builds. But he is the killer that is best encouraged to tunnel survivors out of the game, and that's not fun. I don't like playing killers that have to restrict themselves to really, this is gonna sound weird, but like really sweaty play styles. Now, I think sweaty is something that's like thrown around by people all the time in accusation of someone playing better than them. But in Pyramid Head's case, there's kind of a general consensus that tunneling is the most effective way to slow down the game and win a game as killer in Dead by Daylight. And Pyramid Head is the killer that does that best because of the way that his cages interact with anti-hook or anti-tunneling perks off of hooks. And to have a killer whose main strength beyond the ranged attack is just, oh, I can tunnel you out immediately, doesn't feel satisfying. It just feels depressing. I don't want to have a killer that has to rely or that overly exemplifies and is pretty much the poster child for a toxic playstyle in my usual repertoire of killers. That just it doesn't sit well with me. That's the simplest way that I can put it. So that for that reason, I'm going to be keeping him down here. But maybe after I get better at flicks through walls, he'll feel a little more satisfying. But as it stands, kind of going to be sitting a little bit lower. The Blight, I'm going to put in the like tier. I wasn't sure how to feel about the Blight when I first started playing Blight because I was scared of those more movement-based killers, but I have 900 hours in this game now, most of which have been on Deathslinger. But Blight has been extremely simple while also feeling satisfying to play. The ability to, once you understand how the mouse sensitivity works around the dashes and being able to break pallets instantly, which, you know, some people might be saying like, oh, hold on, that's what you said about Oni. Like, how is Oni not satisfying in that? But for Blight, I think that there's a level of enjoyment that I get out of his power from pinballing off of things. Like being able to just run at full speed into a wall and then flick around and then run full speed to bounce off and guess trigonometry off of like the most optimal way to deny a pallet or a window. I love that. I like being rewarded for being able to think ahead, especially in moments where I have very limited windows of opportunity. Not trying to make a pun there, but you know, like when you have those narrow margins that to work with and you have to make those snap decisions like you do with Deathslinger, that's where killers feel the most satisfying to me. Now sometimes with Blight, the thing that I don't like about him is similar to Billy and Nurse, where Billy and Nurse are both such strong killers that people either A, fold to them immediately, B, disconnect, or C, they have been playing against Blight 17 times today. They've been at their computer for the last 18 hours, and they're like, my god, I'm gonna have to bring out the best strats again to be able to beat this fucker. And for someone who's relatively inexperienced with Blight and needs to get better at playing him, I feel a little bit bad for being left in the dirt in that way. And so he doesn't go into the love category for me, but he is always enjoyable for me to play nowadays. The Twins. The Twins are gonna go into the top of neutral tier. Now, I know the Twins are severely bugged right now. I mean, more so than a lot of other killers. This is before the whole Arella patch came out as well. But the Twins, they have an interesting power in that you can have that constant map pressure, being able to slug people and gain constant information with Victor, and having that the omnipresence is something that's unique to the Twins specifically. So they have a very unique power. They have a power that doesn't work in the same way that a lot of other killers do. And I sometimes see survivors still dropping pallets against Victor, not thinking that he can actually leap over those pallets. But I do like the constant mounting pressure that this killer can supply, like the Plague. But unlike the Plague, the thing that gets me the most about the Twins and that is barring me from putting them higher in tiers is the bugs. Not outside of the game-breaking ones that they have right now. Sometimes those hitboxes are insane. I don't know why I miss some hits, but I get some others, and it feels like maybe it's latency or maybe it's a map-specific thing. But even after the the proposed rework that was so negatively received that it went back into the can and just ended up being a lot of quality of life changes, the twins still feel really buggy, and I wish they didn't, because there's a great unique play style to have in here by having a killer that can be in 2 places at once. That's really cool. That's something that you don't get from a lot of the rest of the roster, and I wish that Dead by Daylight had the capacity to explore more, especially because of how damned buggy they are. Now, I think that twins have been notoriously one of the least picked killers in the game because of their complexity, but I also think it has to come down to their level of satisfaction and also how it is impossible to play them at a consistent pace. Like, sometimes I'll think like, oh yeah, I'd like to play a game of twins, only to remember, oh yeah, but remember last time on Dead Dog when you just bounced off of nothing in front of like a rail, but the rail was like way off to your left? Yeah, that was a great time, wasn't it? And so I really do wish I could like twins more, because I do think that their power is unique. I do think that getting long-range snipes with Victor is a lot of fun. Just sending the screaming gremlin after people is really funny. But man, do I wish that this killer actually worked as designed. Next up, we have the Trickster. I fucking hate this guy. I hate everything about him. Oh, where do I start with this one? I think the real reason why I hate the Trickster the most is that he has a power that isn't really a power. You have to add extra steps in order to actually use your power or get any use out of your power. You have to stack multiple knives that have weird spread because he throws from the left and right hands as the projectiles are to like a consistent point on your screen all the time, and you get slowed down for using your power, so it's more likely that you'll be encouraged to take an M1 or hope that somebody tries to camp a pallet that you can easily hit them behind. This killer, more than anything, is so frustrating to play. Well, not more than anything. There are other kills that I dislike more than Trickster, because at least Trickster can feel satisfying in using main event and denying people coming out of basements and things like that. But the fact that you have to use multiple steps of a power to actually have a power is so annoying. Like, I hate playing this guy because I'm so upset thinking about playing this killer that I can't even put it properly into words. That's how much you should understand that I hate this guy. I hate his lore, I hate his stupid ass laugh, I hate his terror radius, and every fucking time that I play Survivor and I go against Trickster, they always tunnel somebody. And so they're not fun players to play against either. Fuck Trickster. Hate this guy. He deserves this tier. You understand why he's in here now? Fuck Trickster. Next up, we have a very different change of pace. I really like Nemesis. In fact, he's probably at the bottom of my love tier up there. Nemesis is just like a big hulking oaf that I can whip you with, and that's really all I need sometimes from my video games. I don't need a whole lot of complexity. I don't need a whole lot of interesting playstyles or interesting designs. Nemesis is just like, I'm going to run you down and slap you. And that's really funny to me. That's the main reason why I love this killer so much. But also his power denies pallets and has a lot of little intricacies that feel really satisfying to pull off, while also not being terribly detrimental for using his power incorrectly. Of course, survivors who know how to make distance or know how to play around his hitbox will do so, but there are little tricks here and there that you can learn to catch on to. And that's where he feels the most satisfying to me. You can drag the whip, you can hit over some specific obstacles sometimes, and you can make survivors greed pallets more often. Survivors greed pallets against Nemesis all the time. Like, every time that I'm in the first chase with a survivor in a game, I will often not pull out my whip unless it's an easy open area with which I can actually get them on. Because Nemesis, people think like, oh yeah, Nemesis always wants to hit an M2, and then I hit him with the M1, and they're like, what the hell is this? Why am I getting hit with an M1? And then now they're scared. Then when they're scared, they drop pallets more often, and then you get free whips afterwards. It's like, it's a neat little sequence of information that you can work with Nemesis that is learned and that people don't usually expect. And I feel really proud of myself for being able to understand that pattern, and that's why he's really fun. The zombies don't really do a whole lot aside from annoy people and give off like directional information, but it's funny getting value off of it. I'm sure that some of you have seen me get value off of this killer and the zombies as well, which in case you're wondering, my zombies are named Bertrand and Linda. Next up we have the Pinhead. Pinhead I'm also going to put at the top of neutral above Twins, in the sense that there is a power that can be interesting, but more than any other killer, there's a level of complexity that I haven't been able to unlock. No pun intended, but a level of complexity I haven't been able to unlock yet, and I feel like I am being held back by not being able to dedicate tons of hours to learning this killer. And to be honest with you, I'm not entirely interested in putting a ton of hours into this killer, because I already have a killer that I like to play, which is Deathslinger. But I will say that Pinhead is a level of satisfaction to him, hitting chain hits, getting people pressured off of the box, or forcing them to take the box to deny the pressure that would be otherwise applied to themselves. That is a really neat component of his power. Thing I don't like a lot about him, and the reason why he's not in a higher tier, in the same way that Blight would probably be more interesting to me, or how Twins would be better if they weren't so damned buggy. The thing that I don't like is how his power is very RNG. You might be on like a tight 4 lane or something, and you hit a chain on somebody going through a window, but then all your chains spawn and they immediately break on the environment, like they don't even hit the survivor. And so if you're not running impaling wire, you don't get any value from your power, and you're several meters away now that you've had to waste your time using your power. And that always feels kind of crappy. I do think that if impaling wire was a little bit more base kit, like you always spawn 1 chain if 2 or more chains didn't hit the survivor off of an M2. I don't know what the name is. I know there's the gateway and then the summoning chain, I think. Anyway, if there was like something impaling wire more base kit, he would feel a lot more satisfying, a lot less RNG to play against, because I think that when survivors when the chains break on the environment, that's not the survivor outplaying the killer's power, that's just the killer's power straight up not working. And that is the main criticism, the main thing that I have against Pinhead. Artist I do not play a lot of, but I do like Artist. Artist being this anti-loop killer, which you'll see is pretty commonality, or high commonality, with all the killers that I have in this higher tier. But a good anti-loop killer and a great cross-map information killer. Now you can get damages at range with her. That is entirely possible if you're strafing alongside a survivor, or if you know how to slingshot, or if a survivor for some reason doesn't cleanse their birds and you predict the location properly. But Artist feels satisfying. I think that being able to deny loops and recognizing when a survivor is leaving a loop because they think you're setting down a bird, there's a give and take there that most other killers don't really tend to have. Now, I don't have her in love category because she does feel a little one-tricky, and trying to play her with the same playstyle of just being a palette denial bird lady isn't always the most fun. I would much prefer to also have the ranged ability with her, and it's just not the strongest way to play her in general. But she is a good pressuring killer that has a good downside and has a lot of intricacies to her power, and I still enjoy playing her whenever I do get the chance to do so. Onryo I like, but we're gonna very tentatively put at the bottom of like, and this might come as a surprise again, considering all of the other killers aside from Pyramid Head here that are in the dislike category, because she is technically just an M1 killer, but she's an M1 killer with stealth, which I already have established that I like here. And then on top of that, also is rewarded for map knowledge. Now, I might even drop her down to neutral, or I would consider dropping her down to neutral, because of how some maps can be really bad for our TV spawns. Any of the Crotus Pen Asylum maps are really bad, I found out the hard way. And And, well, large maps in general, but especially the Crotus Pen ones. And then there's also the Midwich Elementary School is a horrible map for this killer. Even if you can apply stacks of your power through the wall, teleporting to a TV would supposedly get you close to a generator, but it spawns on the wrong side of the wall because of spawn logic in those maps. And that's also never totally fun to deal with, but man, Bloody Fingernails and the right add-on and build combinations for this killer feels so immensely satisfying. Being able to work off of that and her own brand of chaos that she brings to the table, similar in side quests to the pig, that makes her feel more satisfying to me than a lot of the other M1 killers. And that's why she's up here in, like, I'll be like, oh, let's play a game in Onryo. Why not? I will go ahead and apply Condemned 7 billion times to people and then see them scramble afterwards. It's a lot of fun, and that's why I have her in like tier and above neutral. The Dreg. The Dreg goes with the anti-loop killers here. I used to really like the Dredge. I really used to like Greg, but as time has gone on, the Dredge I have started to dislike more and more because of how it's the counterplay to playing against Dredge is holding W. If you're at a short loop against Dredge, you're probably dead. But if you hold W against Dredge, you probably win because the Dredge doesn't really have any way of catching up to people. It only has a way of encircling and trapping people in tight corners. And that feels boring, right? That feels boring having to just run after survivors all the time. Even after the quality of life changes. And if they're all communicating and they lock lockers properly and everything, the Dredge just feels so slow, can feel really sluggish a lot of times. But in the anti-loop, being able to deny a survivor by snapping back to your remnant and getting the M1 behind pallets and playing around that playstyle specifically is very satisfying. Dredge has a level of satisfaction to it that outshines a lot of the other killers, in my opinion. You feel smart for playing Dredge correctly. Even if the survivor is playing dumb, you're at least smarter than the survivor when you play the Dredge correctly. And that's a play style or an aspect that you don't see with a lot of other killers, especially like the more M1 or anti-loop ones. And hence the reason why it's not lower down the tier list despite the frustrations that can be arisen from its base kit. Wesker. I think I'll like Wesker. Yeah, I don't know how much I like Wesker, so I'm probably just going to put you above Blight because the slap and the hit effect of the Ouroboros tentacle is satisfying. That's probably the main reason why I like Wesker. The dash feels really good. The hit and the impact of the power has great sound design with it. There are funny main builds that you can run with this killer. There's a lot of variety that you can have with him, and the voice lines are really fun. Like he just feels like a fun character in general to play as and even play against, because it's clear when he has the tentacle out, he's gonna try to dash at you, so you gotta try and dodge the dash. And unlike a lot of other killers that can feather or zone with their power, which two of them happen to be in the love category, those being Demogorgon and Deathslinger, you really do have to try and commit with the power, and having the ability to vault over windows and vault over pallets and everything just adds to more uniqueness to his power, but it still feels all very contained in a very simple kit. If you hit dash, you get damage. If you don't hit dash, you don't get damage. And there's such a unique skill ceiling to playing this killer properly that a lot of content creators have latched onto that make me feel like, oh man, if I just knew how to play that a little bit better, or knew how to get that grab in a different way, I would have gotten that down. And so having the capacity for growth on Wesker specifically is what makes me really interested in playing him, and why I think I like him overall compared to a lot of other killers. The Knight. I don't like him. I will put him at the top of hate. I hate playing against the Knight. I hate playing as the Knight. The Knight is buggy. which hasn't been a surprise for a lot of people for a long time. Like, everyone knows that the Knight is buggy, but also I just don't like his playstyle, having to cycle through guards and then micromanage which one that you have to take extra steps to actually use the power, to then have your Knight go or your guard go chase after a survivor, and then possibly accompany that hit onto into a down. It feels detached, it feels micromanagey, and it's ultimately boring, because you're like, okay, there's survivors over here, let me go send Jailer to go terrorize them for a little bit, and then go off and find somebody else and split my pressure. Which I know that being in two places at once was one of the reasons why I like the Twins, but I don't like it with the Knight, because the Knight feels detached from his power. He feels like, I'm just going to have somebody go run in circles for 40 seconds while I have the Jailer with add-ons chase him down, which is never fun. That much is not all that enjoyable to me. And then on top of that, the hitbox for his power, and having to think about what guard I actively have active so that I can make the most efficient play at all times, reaches a level of complexity that becomes frustrating more than it becomes endearing, and I just don't like playing it, man. It's just not fun. Next up, we have the Skull Merchant. Skull Merchant is uniquely in the hate tier because she doesn't really have a power. Like, she kind of has a stealth anti-loop thing going on right now, but if I wanted to play an M1 killer that has stealth anti-loop, I would just play Wraith. But if I wanted to play a killer that had traps that I could place and gave me a little bit of stealthiness ability, I would just play Hag, or I would play Trapper, because at least those two, with Hag you can teleport and get multiple hits at a time, especially if you're running Save the Best for Last, or Trapper, if somebody snaps their ankles on a bear trap, you have the ability to follow up on them. Skull Merchant, on the other hand, has so little of a semblance of a power that she becomes awful to play. She's just not fun. And I put her in hate tier because, in a similar way to Trickster, where his power doesn't really do anything when you bring it up and it might even detriment you, it's the same thing for the Skull Merchant. The Skull Merchant also being rather buggy, where if you deploy a drone in an incorrect location, which I don't know what the stipulations are for it, the drone scan line will only fire in one direction and it won't rotate at all. Like, I don't know what's up with that bug or why that happens, but having to go back and manually reset and then reset the drone feels like extra steps for so little payoff, and it's so immensely frustrating to play this killer nowadays. Next up, we have the Singularity, who we're going to put as my second favorite killer overall. I know that I said that I don't like micromanaging with the Knight, but Singularity, the thing is, oh, let me check a camera, that person has goop on them, let me teleport to them. The actual use cases of Singularity's power are so binary, pun intended, because he's a robot, code joking, code making jokes about, this is falling apart, of a Singularity feels really fun to play because of how the power has some very straightforward use cases. If I know that there's somebody on a generator or crossing this part of the map, I go and I mark them with a camera that I have set up. It almost feels like a trap killer, actually, in a lot of ways, where if somebody walks into this dangerous zone and I know that they're in that bad zone, I can then punish them for walking into that trap zone. Which actually just feels like a much stronger version of Skull Merchant. Skull Merchant has to wait for somebody to get scanned multiple times to have a claw trap on them. Singularity, on the other hand, is like, oh, okay, cool, you're walking through this area, let me scan you with my camera right away, and then teleport across the map and have this constant pressure available. He feels so unique in comparison to a lot of the other killers. Being able to invalidate pallets and be, again, another anti-loop killer makes me love playing Hux above a lot of other killers. And I love his voice lines. I like robots. I think that robot voices are really cool. And so I have Hux up here because he fun to play, has some complexity, but not such like dour complexity in that I have to be thinking about multiple functions at a time. I can think, do I have this? And it's a very simple yes or no answer. Xenomorph. Xenomorph I am neutral about. I'm going to put it with Huntress here. So Xenomorph, she has the problem where the tunnel placements similar to Onryo's TVs, but with Onryo having like the invisibility and the stealth kind of thing going on, and still having a power anyway, feels pretty fun because you have the passive pressure. Xenomorph, on the other hand, has some stealth, has some mobility and information gathering, but it's not nearly as satisfying, and also being screwed over by tunnel placements just feels awful. Not having, and if gens are completed by where there's a single tunnel, then you lose a part of your power and part of your mobility because you no longer have the capability to really have, or you no longer have a reason to really go to that part of the map anymore. It kind of sucks, but landing tail strikes with this killer is so satisfying. Being able to go across the map and gain information freely and choose where you go to gain that information is something that is unique to this killer. Now, of course, like, flame turrets are a little bit annoying, but I do think that the counterplay and having to actually interact with your power to go through tunnels to gain information and continue being this ever-present entity that people don't know where you're going to pop out of is something that is relatively unique. Now, I rank them lower than Demogorgon because you have less freedom with where you can move to, and you also don't get that extra stealth when you come out of a tunnel. You just show up and everyone's like, oh shoot, there's the Xenomorph, time to get running. So not always like a loved or liked killer, but not terribly down in neutral, but mostly just because of the limitations that their power currently offers. Chucky I'm starting to like. Which I know sounds insane because I'm inconsistent with these rankings. Chucky and Oni have similar churning radius issues, but after I've been watching some streams and videos on Chucky, I realized just how good the power can be. Now, I know he's been nerfed multiple times, and I know that he's a lot slower than he used to be, and the power kind of sucks and doesn't feel quite as good as it used to, and I get that. The churning radius thing makes it so that he's at the bottom of, like, could even be in neutral right next to Pinhead here, but in the power's usage and in the ability to extend that hitbox with the post M2 swing, and in that you also have some stealthiness. Like, I love stealth. I love being able to sneak up on people, and uniquely being able to play around a third-person perspective is something that you really don't get with a lot of powers. Like, Chucky's complete power package feels unique to Chucky. But yeah, Chucky's power feels really unique. It feels different than a lot of other powers do, and having the ability to then scamper over windows and then drag an M1 to get an extra hit feels like I'm being rewarded for understanding how the hitboxes on the power work. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to be like, I don't like how I can get hit by random things with the Chucky, and I understand that, because that is immensely frustrating to feel like, oh, I'm out of Chucky's power. Oh wait, there's a lingering hitbox on this thing until he stops the animation completely. That is annoying. I will 100% agree with anybody who brings that up as a criticism against Chucky. However, I really like him because of his voice lines, and I like him because he has such a unique flavor to him that you don't really get with a lot of other killers, but it's still simplistic enough to be able to play uniquely, to be able to play around, that it has a weakness, and that it also has, like, it still has a decent... You're still able to catch people rather quickly with it too, and follow up on damage state so you can deal with them. Unknown. The Unknown. I'm gonna put at the top of dislike. First disliked killer we've had in a while. I think this killer might have been ranked higher before, but for every satisfying globule hit and M1 that you can get with this killer comes a dissatisfying bounce, because hitboxes are weird with that power specifically, and just constant M2 faking. Like, you can do a lot with Deathslinger, you can do a lot with Demo, you can do a lot with Artist, but Unknown, more than any other killer, feels like it has to go for M2 fakes, and I really don't like that. I don't like how I have to zone people and force them to make a movement mistake and just go for an M1, because the teleport is the more powerful part of my power. It makes me feel less involved with this power and less rewarded for using it in general. And the teleport's kind of fun. The voice lines are kind of fun. Being able to sneak up on people and just be the creepy stick figure that it is fun. I'm not going to say that there isn't some fun aspects to it. That's why it's at the top of dislike and almost in neutral. But the more frustrating parts of the Unknown's power tend to far outweigh the fun parts of it. And I come away feeling like, wow, I really didn't earn that hit because all I did was M2 fake, or wow, I really didn't earn that hit because the globule just bounced off of that tree or that wall incorrectly, or oh, that hitbox wasn't as large as I thought it was, or oh, that was a lingering hitbox and I got that hit when I shouldn't have. I feel like I do a lot of things with Unknown by mistake, and I don't like that. I like being intentional and not frustrated by using the power. Speaking of frustrated using the power, Vecna. Vecna goes below Trickster for me. I hate this guy. I hate how I have to cycle through a menu of 4 things to think about what I'm going to be doing next. Now, obviously, I have a lot of very similar segues in this video, so I got to change my sentence structure here a bit. But Vecna, you do have a couple of like 2-sided decisions. I want to raise or deny a pallet, or I want to get a hit while I'm in chase. I use Mage Hand, or I use the skeletons. I want to see if survivors are on the other part of the map, and I want to travel there. Well, then you have the Spelling Orb and your flight. But having to go menu and then being like, okay, this side's the one for the Skelly Boys, and this side's the one for the Mage Hand. Oh, but that one's the flight, and it feels jittery a lot of the times. I think the sensitivity on the radial menu makes me select the wrong one, and then so I have to go back and be like, oh wait, hold on. In this time that I've thought about trying to get the right power, and I meant to go for Mage Hand, but I accidentally selected Flight, I have to go back to Mage Hand so I can deny this pallet. By the time I've been able to make that change to find Mage Hand and actually equip it, I've given the survivor distance with which to loop around the pallet again. The Skelly Boys can be ducked, which is honestly, like, it's a good counter. I don't think that it's bad that can be countered, and there are some fun things you can do in the way of throwing the Skelly Boys under the floor to try and catch people on the backside of walls and everything. But when you use your power, you don't have a power for 30 seconds, and that's frustrating. I've done all this micromanaging, I've done all this like minor manipulation to try and find the right power that is good for this specific instance and this specific chase that I'm trying to engage with, and then, oh darn, I used the power incorrectly, or I have this cooldown after using Mage Hand where I'm incapable of being able to hit the survivor. Now I don't have a power, now I can't fly back, now I have to get a hit, and I have to be running Pearl of Power to actually get the cooldown to work. This killer becomes frustrating so quickly, especially against people that are experienced against him, especially on maps that just don't really work for him. And I wish that there was more ways to play it in a more simplistic manner. And I understand that they want to make it so that it's like you're casting cantrips from Dungeons and Dragons, but it comes off as over bloated, and I don't like having to go through an options menu. I don't like having to go through the Skyrim menu to understand where I'm going to be getting my next hit from. I would rather just hit the survivor and work my way up from there and use my power in conjunction with it instead of having 4 gimmicks that don't match with each other. Speaking of gimmicks that don't really match with each other, how about Dracula? Another killer that has so much. I'm gonna put Trickster way down here because Trickster's easily my least favorite killer in the game. At least Dracula is not the worst of the offenders. But where Vecna has the menu that you can quickly swap between, if I accidentally choose the wrong transformation for Dracula, I'm stuck with that decision for 5 seconds. And oh man, and then I have to think, okay, I gotta get the hit, and then I have to swap to bat form, and then I have to catch up to them in bat form, but hopefully they don't double back so that I can actually hear them. And then when I'm in bat form, the best way for me to then continue the chase is to go to wolf form, and then I go to wolf form, and then I do the dash, but then I miss the dash, so then I have to go to Dracula form to throw up the fire, but then I have to pre-aim the fire and get slowed down so that I have to then hit the person over the back of the item again. Oh, but I missed the fire, so I gotta wait until I can go into bat form to go over the pallet to then swap into wolf form. It's like, it's too much. The decision tree is too big. I hate it. I hate having to think about transforming all the time. I hate having to play around a power that just feels like I have to micromanage it all the time to do the right thing, and if you don't do the exact right thing at all times, you're shit out of luck for the next 15 seconds, buddy. Good luck. Go back to bat form and go hide in a corner so that nobody has to hear your dumbass. Oh my god, I hate this killer. I didn't think I'd get that worked up over Dracula, but no, I hate playing Dracula. He's very frustrating, and even though he is strong, I just don't like playing him. I don't find enjoyment in how strong he is, because when I do get hits, I feel like I didn't earn that, or, oh, okay, cool, this killer's just nuts because he can hit you from a billion miles away and close distance instantly, but at the same time, he's so frustrating. Oh my gosh, I hate playing Dracula. Let's move on. Let's move on to Houndmaster, whom I'm starting to feel a little more neutral towards, probably slightly above Huntress here. Now, Houndmaster does have the same kind of problem that you do with Dracula, but at least with Houndmaster, and the reason why she's way up here, she has, like, the more binary decision in the way that Singularity does. It's like, okay, well, I'm far away from the rest of the survivors, and I need to traverse the map. Let's go use the chase, or the search command. Oh, there's a survivor at this loop. Let me use the chase command and try to catch them with the dog. And similar to Deathslinger, even, you can hit people behind pallets, and you can redirect your dog so that you can hold people in place or deny them from being able to get unhooks and everything. There's a lot of like little intricacies with Houndmaster specifically that does actually come across as fun to play. Now, the frustrating thing that I have about her is redirecting the dog is kind of annoying at times, and you have to do it so quickly, and I don't like having to like M2 and then click the right button to then M1 again to dash to try and catch a survivor. But with the power being up so regularly, and with it being such a straightforward piece to use that has a lot of anti-loot potential, which I do like, and is a rather simplistic power, which I also like, it can be good at times, but as soon as they fix the bugginess with her, and as soon as I can get my act together with playing her more regularly, I think that I do like Houndmaster to some extent, and she might even crawl up the rankings here as time goes on. And finally, Kaneki. Where do I want to put Kaneki? I think I want to put him next to Dredge, and I'm going to put him above Dredge, because I haven't played the Kaneki on the newest patch yet, again, because of the massive bugs that we're having right now, but Kaneki, everyone hates playing against Kaneki right now because they're sick and tired of seeing his ass, but also there is something to be said about how fun it is to just slingshot yourself around the map and get these hits through various obstacles and things with them, and having a mechanic that you're like, okay, now that I'm enraged, I get an extra dash, and then I can jump over pallets a little bit faster and things like that. Having that system in place is a lot of fun, and it feels rewarding for being able to understand what a marked survivor versus non-marked survivors mean. But I do find the playstyle of having to just slingshot yourself around the map and then play behind pallets to then brutal strength them all the time a little bit repetitive, a little bit boring. Not a great anti-loot killer, actually. Really good against the Shift W technique that survivors love to do all the time. But I'm not looking for a killer that can be extremely oppressive and can always counter the Shift W meta. I want to have something that actually has a bit more intricacy to them. And Kaneki doesn't, even though you do have the Mark Survivor thing, Kaneki doesn't have a whole lot of diversity in gameplay. Similar to like Wraith, right? Or similar to Doctor, where it's like, okay, cool, you're at a pallet, let me do this thing. You're over here, let me go launch across the map. It might be fun for a little bit in terms of the movement schematics like you can with Hillbilly, but ultimately I don't find Kaneki all that interesting, but I can't deny that he is sometimes fun to play. And yeah, that's kind of, well, that's all my thoughts on all the killers in Dead by Daylight. These are 100% objective feelings. No one else can argue with me because I am the correct person all the time. Thank you, like and subscribe. I'm on Twitch sometimes. Okay, bye-bye.